The racism mind control game. And what a game it is. I prepared this a chapter for today, and this is my so-called thumbnail, a painting, apparently, I think 1800s. I have a similar one. And I thought, well, that's a nice picture. I can slap on my title. But of course, we have to think all the time, constantly being mocked with with the ridiculous media by them. This is an example. Of course, the media started with paintings, sculptures, books, theater, one big theater. What do I mean? Well, here we have a lovely picture of a large contingent of black slaves harvesting sugarcane, maybe in the Caribbean, maybe in Central or South America. And who's watching over them? Who is watching over them? Apparently no one. We have one white man in his black top hat on a horse, apparently carrying no weapons. Not that a weapon would be very useful when dealing with such a large number of slaves spread over such a distance. There might be a second white man here, I'm not sure. It's doubtful, but in any case, he's not armed either. There is a youngish black man, very well dressed here. Is he carrying a riding whip? Maybe. All these slaves, I should also remark, are very well dressed. Sunday best, apparently. Ladies in dresses. How practical is that? Dresses and waistcoats. It's a joke. Big joke. And yes, of course, they would run away very quickly because, well, those crazy Europeans didn't remove the indigenous population from the land before bringing supposedly black slaves. So your black slaves could easily just flee and, I suppose, find indigenous people to host, help, and welcome them, as apparently white people did when they were not happy being part of the European project, colonization. Yes, well, how much of that is true? Maybe none. I do suspect. Well, let's have a read. I will share a few pictures and 3 or 4 pages of text. This is again from my encyclopedia, Comedia. I'm supposed to be working on the criminal Bible, but I get distracted sometimes. This is our chapter, Racism, the Racism Mind Control Game, in the Comedia chapter. Racist actions are being faked and encouraged in order to divide us and prevent us from knowing our true enemies. The WCC, all its accomplices, and anyone who is supporting them with their work, taxes, and purchases. Therefore, probably everyone is guilty, myself included. This is a big subgenre of fake news. Colored people were enslaved, and all white people are guilty of committing slavery, even if they are not related to white slave masters and traders. Perhaps this subgenre began with the story that white Europeans brought African slaves across the Atlantic to the Americas. The story is absurd, because the Americas had plenty of native peoples who could be enslaved. And yet, evidence suggests that black Africans were brought to the Americas. Evidence. But for what reason, if black slaves were not really needed for their labor? Was it done solely to create confusion, or did Negroid black people such as the Quilombo already exist in the Americas, as some people believe? Not me, really. The Quilombo represent a curious case. They are allegedly a group of ethnic Africans who escaped from slavery in Brazil and established communities in nearly every state of Brazil. That itself is astounding because much of Brazil is, or was, mostly still is, dense jungle made doubly difficult to traverse because of its many tributaries to the enormous Amazon River. Who helped the Quilombo cross the Amazon jungle, where they floated across its rivers and canopies? It's no easy task to cross the Amazon, and yet the Quilombo are all over the Amazon. Sorry, all over Brazil. Here's a painting allegedly portraying abuses against Quilombo slaves. It's titled Slavery in Brazil, 1834 to 1839 was the date of its painting, a 5-year stretch. Very strange. It was painted by Jean-Baptiste Debray. Maybe I should examine that surname. John the Baptist Debray. Notice the date of production. Do you believe that the Quilombo slaves in the painting posed for Jean-Baptiste for 5 years? Do we believe that Jean-Baptiste, a white man, wanted to document the abuses of white masters against their slaves? How would that benefit him? Who would buy such a painting if blacks had no money? And whites are all racists, of course. Why does the European man's whip, note, have 2 large leaves on its tip? Is it to slow down the whip? And how could those leaves remain attached to the whip? And why are no welts? And why is no blood visible on the victim? And why, in the background, is a black man whipping another black man while 2 black women stand casually watching? Not so clear even in the best picture I could find. Yes, there's a black man or woman apparently attached to a tree, tied to a tree, and a black man with his arm and his stick or whip raised above his head. And there we have 2 women standing idly by, black women, as if they don't care. Well, well. It doesn't make any sense. Not supposed to. It's mocking everyone who isn't thinking about what they see, hear, and read. Are these questions sufficient evidence of the fact that the painting is a lie and a mockery of everyone who doesn't think? I hope so. It's time to get thinking, people. The adjectival form of quilombo is quilombola, which is interesting because ombola is a Malagasy word that means money. And Malagasy is not strictly African, but relates to the indigenous people of Madagascar, who are supposedly part African and part Austronesian. And Ombo, of Quilombo, is related to the Egyptian word for gold, which was an early form of money. Money and gold are almost synonymous. Coincidence? No. As for quill, it's a Germanic word that meant to extract. So quilombo seems to mean to extract gold, which does relate to slavery in the Americas, Brazil included. However, the complex linguistic nature of the name Quilombo suggests the Quilombo were named by highly literate aristocrats. And the very wide distribution of the Quilombo suggests they were dispersed by the technologically advanced Zeppelin-flying WCC. This suggests that the black slavery narrative is mostly an invention that continues to tempt blacks to view themselves as unique victims of slavery rather than as non-unique victims of the WCC's semi-clandestine global slavery economy. Yes, it's all distraction. We can cry about the past and really continue living it in the present. How silly. Another thing comes to mind. If Quilombo and Quilombola contain Egyptian and Malagasy words, how is that possible? The Quilombola are supposed to be from Western Africa. I forget the name of the country. And neither Madagascar nor Egypt are near Western Africa. They're not even near each other. Who's making up these word games? Obviously, people who were very mobile even 200 years ago, mobile nobles, the aristocracy, the WCC. Did the Quilombo ever work in gold or silver mines, and did they escape by the hundreds and thousands and create so-called rebel slave towns throughout Brazil? This is highly doubtful. Why would their masters pay for slaves and allow so many to escape? It's just not good business, not sustainable. In fact, popular usage of the word quilombo also suggests that they were not involved in mining. Originally in the Rio de Plata region, the word quilombo meant brothel and later mess or disorder or conflict. But a great quilombo can mean fun party. Oh, more mysteries. More nonsense. The "we are unique victims of slavery" narrative also falls apart when we study the history of Christopher Columbus bringing Native American slaves in the opposite direction, opposite of the transatlantic trade route, eastwards across the Atlantic from the Caribbean to Spain. The story is absurd because Spain had access to the African slave trade, which was much more convenient, as Africa is on Spain's doorstep. And African slaves were allegedly easier to enslave than American natives. Did I say African slaves were easier? Yes. Well, okay. If Native American slaves were brought across the Atlantic to Europe, how are we to believe that at the same time or soon afterwards, Europeans brought African slaves in the opposite direction, from Africa to the Americas? How does that make sense if the Americas are full of Native Americans? Or were they? Are we to believe that Native Africans were so much easier to enslave than Native Americans? So much easier that it was worth paying to ship them across the Atlantic, while a little earlier, Christopher Columbus brought Native Americans to Europe. Apparently, he wasn't worried about any difficulties enslaving them. Christopher Columbus, CC, Christ, Colon, in it's Cristobal Colon in Spanish. Colon is also the root of colonize. And Christopher Columbus is the first colonist in North America. It's a word game. Large-scale slavery begins in Europe, from which it grows to involve every habitable continent and every ethnic group. The aristocratic WCC raised, farmed, and captured slaves for themselves. Well, I think the slaves were mostly busy building their own prisons, as we are now, building or installing, what are they called now? Flock cameras. All eager students, graduates of computer science and programming, helping to create surveillance software, scanning tech, etc. Oh, we're building our own prison, building giant data centers. Nothing has changed. We're still building our own prisons. As I said, the aristocratic WCC raised, farmed, and captured slaves for themselves. England had English and later Irish slaves, and Spain had Spanish and Moroccan slaves. And much of their work was initially, yes, building their own prisons, fortresses, digging tunnels, not always by hand, sometimes just working to remove the debris produced by secret tunnel digging tech. The scale of traditional slavery is small compared to the scale of modern slavery. Now billions instead of millions are enslaved, dependent on employers, governments, drugs, entertainments, and bad foods. But the devil's trick is to make the new slaves believe they are free and that slavery only existed in the past, when slaves couldn't choose their paymasters. During the early 1900s, Mark Twain's and Adam Hochschild's King Leopold's Ghost, a satirical novella, claimed that King Leopold of Belgium turned the Congo into his personal rubber plantation and killed and maimed millions of African slaves. Is that possible? The automobile industry barely existed, and only Americans and Europeans rode bicycles with rubber tires, with a possible total of 20 million bicycles existing in 1900. The numbers don't make sense. Who needs all that rubber? Who needs millions of rubber collectors, harvesters to produce rubber for 20 million bicycles? How often are we replacing our tires? Leopold's alleged atrocities are fiction created to distract us from the capitalist industrial slavery that was happening to mostly white people in Europe and North America, and soon to people in every nation. The King Leopold story claims King Leopold's plantation managers were merciless monsters who chopped off the hands of any slave who did not produce enough rubber. Why would they do that? Isn't disabling unproductive workers counterproductive? Wouldn't facial disfiguration be a better punishment? At least facially disfigured slaves could continue trying to be productive. Thieves sometimes have their hands chopped off, at least in the past, maybe still in Saudi Arabia. A primitive logic explains that sort of justice. And the world cannibal cult often chopped off the hands and feet of bodies before cooking. Yeah, they're not so desirable in the pot. I just had to throw that in as a reminder of who we're dealing with. In fact, I saw there is a crypt, I guess, in Ireland that has a famous, what are they called again? Well, it's called a kind of coffin with a mummy in it, and its feet are missing. Well, of course, they didn't want feet. Another large thread of the black slavery narrative was woven through the southern U.S. In the 1800s, fake slave testimonials were written by white men pretending to be literate black former slaves. And the KKK, well, K is the 11th letter in the alphabet, and 3 Ks equals 33, created hysteria and black resentment, fear, and anger by faking lynchings around the US. The first decent photograph I found on the internet of a lynching confirms my theory. It claims that a black man was permitted to wear a rimmed bowler hat during his lynching. There you go. There we go. Lovely bowler hat. It's not even possible to be sure this man is black. Everyone else is wearing bowler hats as well. Nearly everyone. Or other hats. Well, it also claims the hat did not topple during the violent neck-twisting lynching. Yeah, how do you manage that? I guess it was secured very tightly. And the lynchers didn't mind that he went in style. Did blacks actually wear bowler hats? And isn't it convenient that the bowler hat helps to cover the face of the victim in the photograph? But some of the victim's face is plainly visible and I think distinctly pale, although with this bizarre lighting, it's not, can't be quite sure. Additionally, in the photograph provided here, women are not visible among the possibly 200 male witnesses, all of whom appeared to be posing for this photograph. No interest at all in the lynched victim who must have done something terrible to deserve this fate. Why are there no women in this crowd, this mob? Were women not commonly enrolled in Masonic lodges? Maybe not at that time. Secondly, the men are mostly looking towards the camera, not toward the victim. It's all a joke. It's all fake. Oh, these people here, some people here decided to look around at, who knows? It looks like this man is hanging over the mob. People are just milling beneath him. The rope is barely visible. Maybe this photograph was manipulated. Oh, maybe, you don't say. The background lighting is very different from the foreground lighting. And look at that house. It's just drowning in sunshine. And other houses in the background, hardly visible. Yes, we just hang people in someone's front yard, side yard. And how was this man hung 6 feet above the ground without apparently without a box or step ladder? That rope must be attached about 18 feet above the ground. Someone, this is not practical. I'm not sure anyone would climb that tree, but I'm no monkey. More recently, the media fed us the story that black slaves worked in diamond mining, an industry based on the manufactured perception that diamonds are rare. The story evolved into the story that presently 40,000 black children are being enslaved in the Congo to mine cobalt with their bare hands. This is an empirical and economic absurdity. Cobalt is a rare earth mineral. No amount of children could mine enough for the electronics industry. Furthermore, we are living in the machine age. Are we to believe that giant mining machines are used in mines all over the world except in the Congo? Again, the black slavery narrative exists primarily to distract us from the reality that billions of people, not thousands or millions, are currently enslaved, exploited, poisoned, and poor. The whites lynching blacks narrative stopped during the first half of the 20th century. But the whites were bad to blacks narrative continues, though now blacks must share the spotlight with indigenous people and browns. But in the mid-20th century, the fake red menace of communism and fake mob violence emerged. The old mob, the criminal mob, they emerged as the new social dramas. We also suffered the drama of World War I, in which quite possibly soldiers were permitted to kill each other for nothing. Next came the Cold War, then Vietnam, then psychopathic murderers dominated the news. Then post office workers began killing people, and psychopathic mass murderers killed for no known reason. Then that stopped, and environmental terrorism stepped into the spotlight. Then that stopped, and we got a barrage of Islamic terrorists. Then global warming hit the spotlight, and suddenly we suffered a barrage of continuing and mind-numbing school shootings. Back to the Congo. Here's a lovely photo of two very young boys, apparently employed, mining for cobalt. Allegedly, thousands of black children mine cobalt in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. These two boys are remarkably clean and well-dressed, aren't they? Well-dressed for the job, in white socks and cream-colored sweater. They pose while holding two chisel-like tools that belong in jackhammers. I did some checking. These are very, very probably jackhammer chisels. attachments. They appear poised to smash a pile of gravel. Very, very useless. Yeah, good pose. Well, the poor things don't know what they're doing. Maybe they were given $1 to pose, and they will never make it to Europe or North America, I guess. The genres change, but the effect on the public remains the same. We are continually being encouraged to live in fear, hope, and anger. In Latin America, the dominant genres are different. During the 1800s, its directors specialized in producing revolution dramas. And since the mid 20th century, the Latin American real drama industry has been specializing in producing drug cartel and mining drama. Although mining projects often require the forcible relocating of native peoples, death squads might be more fiction. Why kill and antagonize people when you can write fake news and stage fake executions and thereby provoke enough fear to move native peoples off land peacefully? Or just pollute the rivers. You don't have to have violent confrontations. You don't need death squads. Maybe scare squads. Deadly force is generally counterproductive because the surviving family and friends will seek revenge, and any mistake or revelation jeopardizes the conspiracy, especially in a world where anyone can post the truth on social media. In contrast, the illusion of deadly force does not enrage family or friends of victims because there are no real physical victims. And illusionism allows the world's media directors to recruit many accomplices and willing crisis actors. Many people are desperate for money, so why not earn money by faking a violent event for the media or faking your work in cobalt mining? If no one is physically hurt, what's the harm? It's only a joke, right? Just sign a non-disclosure agreement and collect your pay. Nowadays, in the West, Black and brown immigrants are being used to generate protests and distraction, a major mind control strategy. In Europe, such immigrants are accused of raping white women and killing white children. I doubt that minority men would risk enraging the white majority, whose taxes often pay their rent and groceries. However, if such atrocities are true, they are still manufactured by government policies that continue bringing violence-prone people into Europe for the express purpose of decreasing wages and enraging the white majority, getting us all angry at each other and unable to know who our real enemies are. In the United States, the pseudo-federal agency ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, is generating fake news stories involving Latin American immigrants in order to outrage and enrage the public. Yes, I mean, really, they want to remove, finally, really, illegal immigrants who are mostly working in jobs that are not so desirable. It's all staged. They want everyone, really, I think, out of the tropics and in the north, where it is much, much more difficult to live independently without, in the south, in the tropics, you could live without any technology. And good luck doing that in the temperate north. You'll need electricity and gas, food brought to you, and that makes you dependent on their system, their slavery system. Well, all these ICE employees, they do it. They fake it for our eyes, ICE. I think ICE might be kind of crypto pun on the word eyes. And they do it in order to distract and confuse us. This means fake physical abuses and fake violence serve as real mind control techniques. To control the public, deadly force is mostly unnecessary. In fact, masters cannot enslave humans by direct force. If such force were used, slaves would fight to the death, and their relatives and tribes would rise en masse. And they would not be good workers, we can be sure of that. At the very least, internal conflict or stress would sicken, maybe kill them. The mind must be enslaved first for slavery to work. The WCC was the first to begin using mental enslavement techniques. It probably began in their underground human farms as they told their slaves promises and threats. This technique continues today. It's very simple. The promise of prosperity and the threat of poverty and social rejection keep billions of people willing to tolerate their enslavement. It helps too to have little toys. But mental enslavement only works because people don't know that they could have better lives living outside the entrapments and enticements of civilization. Nearly 500 years ago, the fictional King Afonso I of the Congo lamented the seductive power of tools, cloth, jewelry, and other knickknacks Portuguese traders brought to Africa. Well, that's the story they give us. The seductive power of civilization has actually increased today. Homes, cars, clothes, and the iPhone in particular enslave humanity in general. Don't expect the media to report it. They are too busy distracting and enslaving our minds with their fake crises and stupid stories. Now, while we are distracted by fake news events, the real and really bad news events are not being reported. What are they? Among others, I believe they concern the ongoing creation of electronic prison systems and a global famine, the building of a global famine that will decimate people of all colors. Yes, the WCC really isn't racist. They've been happy enslaving everyone. This is a classist problem. This is a mental problem. Yes. And speaking of the mounting or the preparations for a global famine, I chanced upon another article I'll quickly share. Let's see. The CBC. Where are you? Maybe that's the one there. No, I'm sharing the same thing. Oh no. One moment. It was worth adding to this reading. There we go. Canada has lost millions of hectares of farmland. Where is it going? I wonder. Federal food security strategy running up against high land costs, fewer young farmers. So there's a federal food security strategy. Ooh, the noble government is trying to be wise and good, but it can't handle high land costs and lack of young farmers. Really, they can control anything they want, but not what they should control. They don't want to control this. A government could uh, be like a communist, totalitarian government, have absolute control over real estate, put a ceiling on prices, put a basement, a bottom on prices for land. It could encourage young people to become farmers. It could do that by making farming more profitable, which it could do instead of, letting corporations run rampant by design. It could take charge, maybe, and create education programs that help or encourage farming. And well, of course, prices are the main obstacle. It's not that high schools, elementary schools have no interest in teaching children about farming. It's prices are not, it's just not a profitable career choice. And so there's also a Ontario Farmland Trust trying to prevent famine in the future in Ontario. It's yeah, a few farmers, I think about 34 farmers in the past 20 years have cooperated with this trust and ensured that their land will be used only for farming for the next 666 years. Yeah, hint, hint. Um, there it is, 666 years. Well, how successful is that? 30 farms. There's a blueberry farm. Not making very good use of his space. My father grew blueberries until just 2 years ago. Well, well. They say in Ontario, 319 acres of farmland are lost every day, mostly to housing development, I guess, golf courses, 319 acres a day. And this organization, Ontario Farmland Trust, there's its website. It has protected in its history, in its 21 years, only 3,365 acres. That's not a lot. That's about 10 days worth of farmland loss over its 20-year existence. Absolutely hopeless, useless, and of course that's by design. By design. They don't want us to eat in the future, maybe very near future. Yes, as I spoke about in my previous Mindcast, Mindshare. Well, please be well, of course, my friends. And if you can, come south, buy land, care for yourselves, get off this slavery system. I'm not off myself either, so I understand if you can't, but something has to happen. At least share this information with others or support me by purchasing a PDF of my work or one or both of my two books presently on Lulu. You can see more information on my little, what's it called? Information video. It's all there on both. Is it on YouTube? Yes, but maybe not yet on BitChute. I must correct that. Take care, friends.